I am entering my 5th season at Syracuse Stage. July 1 will be the beginning of my 5th season. I have to tell you that when I started my 4th season, I had no idea that the second half of our 1920 season would turn out the way it has. This is it's a cliche now, but it is an unprecedented time for all of us, and particularly for a field that's mission, that's essence, is to bring people together and share common experiences. The one thing that we really can't do right now is gather together in a small room, sitting side by side in the dark, and seeing a play or experiencing a musical, the very thing that is the lifeblood of a nonprofit regional theater like Syracuse Stage. As many of you know, we had to basically pause our season in the middle of our season. The last production that we produced on our stage was Amadeus, which opened and closed on March 13th. And I can tell you right now that unemployment in the nation is approaching 20%. Unemployment among actors in the United States is 100%. The unemployment rate is unprecedented. I've never seen anything like it in my 33-year career. And we have no idea when it might change. According to Governor Cuomo, the plan in New York is for theaters to be included in phase 4 of the reopening plan. But we also know through some national polling and some local polling that even when we are allowed to reopen, we're not sure that people will want to come back and see and be together. Right now, national polling tells us that 27% of our audience would be willing to come back in the first few months of a reopening. It's our belief that we really don't start to see an evolution in that opinion until there is a viable vaccine for COVID-19, which, as you know, could be 18 months, 2 years away. So this is the issue that we've been wrestling with at Syracuse Stage, is how do we continue to live our mission at a time when we can't bring people together. One of the first things we did, and we were poised just sort of serendipitously, we had been in conversation with WCNY about recording productions at Syracuse Stage months before it became imperative for us to do so. When it became clear, when we were running Amadeus, and it became clear that we weren't going to be able to really do the run of the show, we had already had a preliminary conversation with WCNY. And so we called them, and within 48 hours, we had a 3-camera setup functioning at the theater to record the opening night performance, which then the directors at WCNY edited with a little bit of input from me. And we were able to broadcast our production of Amadeus just within days of it having to close. In fact, interestingly, and again, in a serendipitous way, the Wall Street Journal picked up on our production and ran a review of it in the Wall Street Journal. They were very kind, a very favorable review of the production. And because of that, people in 47 states and 4 countries watched our production of Amadeus. And it generated enough income for us to keep to basically pay staff salaries for a couple of weeks. And that was great. That was also kind of flukish. So we were very happy that was the way we were able to sort of kick things off. I'm pleased to say that as of right now, Syracuse Stage has not laid off any of its staff, and we believe we'll be able to continue to keep staff employed at least through the 1st of July. We're exploring what happens after the 1st of July, but again, almost all of our peers, there are roughly 1,800 nonprofit theaters in the United States. Of those 1,800, 75 of those theaters, the largest 75, come together to form a collective bargaining organization called the League of Resident Theaters. And we are among those 75 theaters, largest theaters in the United States. We are the second largest nonprofit theater outside of New York City in New York State. But we're the only theater in the LORT grouping that hasn't laid off staff. We came into this pandemic in a relatively secure financial position, but even Syracuse Stage can't sustain that strong position for indefinitely. So we are working now, as we have been working every day, and I can tell you that myself and our team at Stage have put in longer hours since March 13 than we did prior to March 13. We did a couple of things. Our production staff is idle, as you can imagine. There's no plays to produce. So we pivoted our production staff towards the construction of PPE, particularly creating masks for local hospitals, local senior centers, for the city of Syracuse, for Syracuse University. So our team has pivoted and has been making masks since March 13. Our administrative staff has pivoted towards planning and safety research and connecting with our community. Our educational team has really been busy because, as you all know, a lot of families are home together. A lot of kids, of course, are being homeschooled. And so parents and families are looking for things or activities for young people. So we've been particularly focused on that. So we have released all of our children's tour productions. We have worked with the area schools to produce a Young Playwrights Festival that we aired just 2 weeks ago. It was viewed by over 4,000 people. We put out exercise videos for kids. We're doing story time recordings for children. So we are continuing to make sure that we can stay focused on the things we can do. Everything that we're doing is housed on our website at syracusestage.org. Everything that we've released to the public has a central clearinghouse there on our website. Everything is archived. The only thing that we can't give access to are our productions of Amadeus. They are very tightly controlled by a number of labor unions. And so the access to our productions is the thing that is most restricted. So we know that right now we have announced that we are doing the musical once in September. And frankly, will that be able to happen? I don't imagine so. Because, again, I don't know that we'll have clearance to open by September. And a lot of our productions, particularly the large ones, are modeled on being financially modeled on being able to perform at anywhere between 80 and 90% of the capacity of the Archbold Theater there in our home. That theater seats 499 people. And when you aren't able to safely assemble 400 people a night, 450 people a night, then the financial model goes out the window. And so, not to mention the safety of our patrons and the safety of our artists, which of course is our paramount concern. So, we really kind of wrestle with reality, with the numbers, and then we continue to strategize with our friends. We are the resident nonprofit theater company at Syracuse University and have been for the past 47 years. And so we perform in university. We are a separate 501c3, but we perform in residence at the university. So of course, we want to make sure that we are following all of the university guidelines and all the university plans. The university has announced that it plans to resume classes in the fall in a very modified way, I am sure. But we are looking to make sure that we are good partners with our landlords and partners at the university. And so that factor combined with the process of potentially rethinking at least the beginning of our season is really what we're focused on now. In the last 2 weeks, we've also been very mindful about national events. and how a community-based organization like Syracuse Stage may or should respond to events that are happening in our country, events that are happening in our community. We would be naive to assume that the issues happening across our country right now don't affect the work of Syracuse Stage or affect the work that we produce or the ways we engage in all aspects of our community. So that's something that we're working on and thinking about right now as well. So, you know, it is, as I mentioned before, I've been in this business, I've been an artistic director for about 33 years. In the beginning of my career, the early part of my career emerged during the AIDS crisis. And I was working in New York City at the time. And then we've seen a couple of significant economic downturns. We've seen 9/11. We've seen the Great Recession. We have our industry, which is fragile on a good day, has weathered some significant storms. And now we're in probably the biggest storm that I've experienced. I'm sure that many of you have experienced. The nonprofit theater industry is a relatively young industry, 60 years old, really. So a lot of the institutions around the country who don't have the financial stability that Syracuse Stage enjoys will find themselves threatened. And I think we will definitely see some theaters go out of business in the next 18 months. We look at the commercial side of our industry, Broadway, and we see that Broadway has been closed since the beginning of April. No one believes that Broadway is going to open in 2020. And I would be surprised to see Broadway open in any part of early 2021. And of course, Broadway is fed by regional theaters. And when the regional theaters are closed, Broadway doesn't have a lot of new material to develop. And so the whole ecosystem of nonprofit theater and for-profit theater is significantly at risk. We've seen some government assistance, the CARES Act and the Payroll Protection Program provided support to organizations like Syracuse Stage through the middle of June. We don't see really the will to continue that kind of support. So Syracuse Stage, like other nonprofits, will be focused on contributed income and raising funds to get it through to continue to support its employees and continue to be ready to reopen. That's kind of the focus we're on right now, is we want to be ready to reopen when it's safe to reopen. We don't want to find ourselves behind the 8 ball where suddenly, hey, it's all good, we can reopen, and we're saying, well, we won't be ready for 6 months. On the other hand, we can't open too soon because that would be unsafe. A theatrical production takes about 1.5 years to create, all things being equal, all things being normal, before it's ever seen by an audience. There's about 1.5 years worth of planning that goes into opening a play for an audience, getting to that opening night. And so we've been working on the plays that we announced for, well, probably about 8-9 months now. And we had to put all that on hold. We had already hired the staff for all of next season. Contracts had already been issued. That's the way the process of our theater works. You have to work about 1 year in advance. Most every arts group is in that same boat. And so we've put dozens of contracts on hold, frozen a lot of process, and walking that fine line between not overcommitting ourselves financially to projects we may or may not be able to realize, but also being able to be ready for the public when it's safe to do so. So that balancing act is the thing that we're also spending a lot of our time focused on right now. I've just dumped out a whole bunch of information, and before I get too far ahead of things, let me pause and just see what kind of questions you all might like to ask about what's happening at Stage or anything about the process of theater, how theater works. Let me give a pause and see what, because I'm just rambling here, and I want to make sure I get your questions or get this conversation in a direction you're interested in. So let me pause for a second, see what questions you have.
Bob?
Yes.
This is Howie Hollander. I'm a 39-year subscriber to Stage, and I want to thank you for all you're doing to ensure that Stage continues and you keep us all safe in the audience. I saw today that the Metropolitan Opera has already canceled their season next year. Do you see a point where Syracuse Stage might have to do the same thing, and when that call might be made if you did?
It's a good question, Howie. And I'll tell you that some of the flagship theaters in our country, I'll use this as an example, the Guthrie Theater in Minneapolis, the Denver Theater Center in Denver, and others. These are $50 million operations, 35, 45, $50 million operations. And they have announced that they won't be reopening until sometime in until the spring of 2021. And there are theaters that are making those plans and have made those announcements. Syracuse Stage is not among those theaters, and we don't plan to not reopen. We believe we may have to pivot the projects that we've announced, and these bigger theaters who have hundreds of employees have decided that it is more economically viable to do nothing than to produce. And I understand that math. If you can't perform to a full house, if you cannot fulfill subscriber obligations, if you cannot generate enough income through ticket sales, which makes everything you might do a negative, that there's no way to see a positive number on anything you do, I can understand why you would need to shut down. And also some of our bigger theaters are really slow moving ships. And so they have to pivot well in advance to avoid the iceberg. Syracuse Stage, being a mid-sized theater, has a little more, some more ability to pivot and some more ability to turn the ship. And so our model, the model that we've decided to embrace, is one that while we may have to look at smaller projects in the short term, we don't anticipate not producing. Now, there may be something, every day brings a new surprise, and there may be something that causes us to say that, but no part of our, and I'll also say, Howie, that we have prepared contingencies for about 6 or 7 different scenarios. And of course, we have prepared what we call the doomsday contingency of just shutting down for the whole season. There's nothing about that doomsday contingency that we think is right for Syracuse Stage right now. And so right now, the model we're employing is that we sell a subscription season that is 6 plays. And so we are preparing a model of 6 plays that begins in October. We are now working with rights holders, with artists, with a variety of other people to see, and with the university and all the county and our unions to see if it's more appropriate to do smaller cast shows for safety reasons. Dressing rooms, quick changes where people are in close contact to sweaty bodies. Different plays require different kinds of physical intimacy. So how do you look at those models? And how we've done the math in our theater, and we believe that on a really good day, the most we could ever get into our theater socially distanced is 168 people. That's if we have some groups of 4 family units, some groups of 2s, some 1s, but in our theater, 168 is the max. And so how could that model work in terms of the economics? So what we're looking at is perhaps a pivot to some other real, obviously there's no show that I would want to do, no matter its size. I would never do a show that I wouldn't put in our season in any year. I wouldn't put a lot of small shows together in any year, but in this year I might have to. But I still would, there are so many wonderful, great stories. But what we'll do, what we're trying to do, is to be able to produce every show that we might produce in the next 6 months, 9 months, where we can do a live version and a simulcast version, so that some people who want to can come watch it live in a socially distanced way, and others can watch it at home. People who aren't comfortable going out. And can we partner, for instance, with WCNY? They did such a fantastic job filming Amadeus. Can we create really high quality experiences with discussions and programs and surround events and surround complementary materials that make it a rich experience, that while it's not what we would ideally do, it is something that we can do now under these circumstances. And so that's where our energies are right now, and really focused on the things we can do to provide content, to provide entertainment, to provide thoughtful programming in this time of global pandemic. That's a long answer to your question, Howie, but that's what we are looking at right now. That's what we're kind of working on every day to figure out how to pull this off. And we're doing programming this week, for instance. This one of the things we do at Syracuse Stage is a program called Cold Read. And Cold Read is a program of new work. It's curated by our Associate Artistic Director, Kyle Bass. And it brings a playwright a nationally known playwright in residence. It brings local artists together with national artists. And we spend a week reading and talking about and performing brand new work. And it's in its 4th year. And we had to cancel it this year because. But one of the things we were going to do as part of that Cold Read series was the reading of a new adaptation of the Greek tragedy Medea, written by local poet and playwright Charles Martin. Charles Martin also enjoys a wonderful national status as a playwright, but he lives here in Syracuse, and he's done this really quite wonderful adaptation of Medea. And so this weekend, we'll be broadcasting an enhanced staged reading of Medea that's going to be available for free on our website. I think we're promoting the broadcast. Information is on our website. I forget which 3 days it is. I think it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Friday, Saturday, Sunday in the evening. A new adaptation of Medea is something that we're offering for folks to come and watch. We'll be doing a talk back after the 3 nights. We'll be doing some pre-show work, conversations about the story and its relevance to issues today. In fact, right now, Medea is a play at its core about social justice. And so we're very interested in that storytelling that we will be launching this weekend. So we are continuing to think about ways that we can continue to be relevant. We can continue to do the vibrant work that our audience expects of us in new ways. We're all learning new ways. We're all learning different platforms. We're attending seminars and webinars every day to figure out how to create work in this context until we can all be back together again, which, we're not sure, none of us know yet when that might be. Although I will say Syracuse Stage will be open before Broadway is open. That looks like something we can count on. Other questions? Oh, you just answered them all right there.
Question, how you say that these things are available on your website. Many people don't go to your website. How can you reach out to a broader audience and perhaps encourage them to be interested in Syracuse Stage?
That's a good question, Maggie. We're wrestling with that all the time because one of the things, this is a double-edged, the idea you're proposing, which is right on the money, is a double-edged sword, right? Because the internet, in some ways, democratizes work that can be perceived as elitist. Mm-hmm. Because, like with Amadeus, 47 states, 6,000 people saw Amadeus. And the work that we're doing, most of it is available on the internet for free, does democratize our work because it makes it available to many more people than would have access to it otherwise. On the other hand, there are also plenty of folks who don't have access to the internet, or don't, either because it's not available where they live, because there are price barriers, because there are some of our older patrons aren't comfortable with technology, and so you're right. That's where we have to continue to communicate. We are continuing to learn how to do that, working through community groups, working through various community centers. The university has a lot of resources to help us reach out in that regard. And in fact, I was in a meeting today where we were talking about just that topic, about related to Medea, for instance, is who do we reach out to? Who do we talk about making sure that the things we are doing are accessible to people who might benefit from them? So that's a really good question. I don't have a very complete answer because it's still something we're working on. But we have found we're able, as you all know, if you're on the internet, we can track folks who come visit, see our work. We can learn a lot about them just through existing technology that allows us to track people on the internet, like every advertiser does. That's just how the world works. And so we do know that our work is reaching folks who have never come to Syracuse Stage before. It's absolutely not only here in town, but people who geographically have never been here before. We, for some reason, had it in we did a children's play called Suzette, Who's Set to See. And we found that we had a big following for it in Australia. Go figure. But we're working on it. And we need to continue to get the word out through alternative channels. That's the other thing. When we're open for business on a normal year, we kind of have our ways of communicating with folks that tends to work for us. About 70,000 people a year come to Syracuse Stage. Well, now we need new channels, and we're learning about how to find those new channels.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. I will say that, Syracuse Stage, talking about the finances of the organization, Syracuse Stage on a good year is about a $7.2 million operation, and employs about 65 people year round, and then about another 125 artists. And we have about 300 to 400 volunteers. And so as we start, and our fiscal year ends on June 30. So we're about to wrap up this fiscal year. And you can imagine we're taking a pretty big hit because we didn't produce 3 of our 6 plays. Well, we moved, I'll get to that in a second. But as we begin July 1, a new fiscal year, if we have a $7 million budget, we think we will take about a $2.5 million hit right off the top. So we become a $4 million budget, a $4.5 million organization. And so, again, in that context, we are also trying to figure out how we produce work. What I paused on there for a second was because, the 3 plays that were in this current season, Amadeus, which opened and closed March 13. Yoga Play has moved into the new season. So we're still doing Yoga Play. We're just doing it a year later. And then Once, which is scheduled for September, I believe we are working to see if we can show that musical virtually. Because we produced it in Rochester, and we were in the process of moving it to Syracuse when everything went south. And we were able to get a video capture of it in Rochester. I'll give you just a little sidebar on that exploration. When we do plays, one of my jobs is to make sure we can secure the rights to produce those plays. So for instance, any play that we're going to do, unless it's Shakespeare, which is public domain, we have to negotiate for the rights. And rights holders charge us a fee to produce their play. That's just the nature of our economics. Usually a rights holder charges us 8% of gross income. So 8 cents on the dollar we give to the rights holder, unless your name is the Walt Disney Corporation. Walt Disney Corporation expects 12 to 14 cents on the dollar to use their name and produce one of their properties. But generally speaking, we negotiate rights. Well, the variable now is that any play that we might produce that was ever a movie is now problematic for Syracuse Stage, because now the rights holders are mindful of their broadcast rights. If a theater performance happens and goes away and it's one and done, or it's 3 weeks and it's done. But if we record it and show it, then it becomes a film. And so, for instance, we were very, very fortunate and perhaps somewhat lucky that we were given the rights to broadcast Amadeus. Other friends of ours, our friends at the Indiana Repertory Theater, who were in the midst of producing the stage version of Murder on the Orient Express, were denied the opportunity to show that play as a film to their audience. They couldn't record it and show it to their subscribers because the folks who controlled the rights to the film denied access. And so we are now not only securing the rights to broadcast, do the play live, but also to broadcast it. That's a much more complicated negotiation. A lot of the stories that we tell on our stage become films. And the other variable there, and again, I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but the other thing that presents a challenge for us in that regard, we work with a number of labor unions. A lot of my work is involved in labor negotiations. And our union, our actors, are controlled by a union called the Actors Equity Association. They control all live performance professional actors in the United States. They're the folks who are at present have 100% unemployment in their union right now. And if you're in a movie, if you're a movie star, you belong to a union called the Screen Actors Guild. And so we are engaged in a big national debate right now between the Actors Equity Association, actors in plays, and the Screen Actors Guild. If we film an actor and show that film of the play, who gets the dues? Who gets the fees? The Actors Equity Association or the Screen Actors Guild? That's an unprecedented debate in our field, and one that is causing challenges for us right now too. So these are, I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but these are interesting little side conversations that affect our profession that most folks probably wouldn't think about when they're thinking about, doing a play at Syracuse Stage. Let me pause again and open it back up for questions.
Bob, I don't know if you can hear me, but
Yes.
I had a question about the polling that you cited that suggested that maybe 27% of subscribers would be willing to come back under the foreseeable future circumstances. Has it been studied as to what would occur after the development of a vaccine that proved effective, and that that vaccine hopefully would then be actually used by the demographics of your audience, as opposed to the 50% that apparently won't take the vaccine if it is developed, so that you could sort of try to project what your returning people would be in the event of an actual demonstrated effective vaccine.
Yes, that we have done research on that. So the research was done. There's a firm that's based out of Washington, D.C. called Shugal and Associates, and Mark Shugal is their principal. And Mark was here in Syracuse a couple of years ago. Syracuse Stage did a pretty comprehensive market research project that Mark Shugal and his team from DC led for us lots of information, lots of very interesting information about our community and our relationship to the Syracuse Stage was gleaned out of that survey. But Mark Chagall, the Chagall Associates is a national firm. They do a lot of market research in the area of the arts, not just theater, but arts in general. And so Mark and his team did research on this topic in 35 of the largest cities in the country. And because Mark had history in Syracuse, Syracuse was included in this national research. And the materials were published, probably been about 3 weeks ago now. And I had a conversation with Mark about before he had published it, because we talked about, some of the findings that they discovered in this research. And that's where that 27% number came from, that it looked like 27% of those they surveyed. And they were surveying likely theater attendees, not the general public, because it's a much different subset. It's like when they do political polling. Are you polling the general public, or are you polling likely voters or registered voters? So he was polling people who go to theater at more than once a year. And he did discover that the holy grail of return is the vaccine. That once there is some kind of reliable vaccine, then we will see, within a very short time, we will see a return to whatever the new normal is at Syracuse Stage and at theater around the country. So it really is, we get very excited when we read optimistic reports about the availability of vaccines. We also are sobered by medical opinions that put perhaps a reality check on some of that accelerated timeline. And so the research does tell us that it's the vaccine that will make the difference. We have people tell us that they are eager to get back to theater, and they are eager to experience. I mean, right now, I'm eager to go to a restaurant. I mean, really, most anything that would involve some social interaction would be a big plus. But on the other hand, look at Memorial Day weekend and look at some of the pictures we saw from state parks and swimming pools, and that was kind of scary. And so we have to be smart about it. We don't want to be responsible. We have to, because we're mindful that when you look at the typical demographic of a Syracuse Stage audience or a theater audience anywhere in the country, many of our patrons fall into various at-risk groups, particularly as it relates to age. Syracuse Stage skews slightly younger than the national average, but nonetheless, if you've been to Syracuse Stage and you look to your left and you look to your right, particularly if you're there on a Sunday matinee, you know that our audience skews older, and as do all of the performing arts. So we are very mindful of that too. And I think that plays in to the understandable reluctance of why people may be cautious about coming back together. Conversely, and on the other end of the spectrum, we have a very robust educational program that in a normal year takes us into schools around the state, particularly in central New York. And we don't see that returning anytime soon either. Schools are not going to be open to having strangers come into the theater to do assemblies. Both of those things are problematic. Assemblies, we don't think they're going to be happening in public schools anytime soon. And we don't imagine they're going to want people from the outside coming into their classrooms. And so we are building now a whole new virtual model where we can come into classrooms virtually with our productions. And that's one of the things we're working on as we speak, are all the virtual models for education that we're going to try to employ in the fall to try to still be able to reach young people with theater, but do it in a way that schools will allow. So that's something that we're working on as well.
So the research makes sense because, for example, I've got an immunocompromised wife, kidney transplant, potent immunosuppressive medications, no way I could let her go back, or our adult children would let her go back probably without an effective vaccine. And some other arts organizations like Symphoria, that many of us have tickets to, they have a similarly almost a bigger challenge than you all do in trying to somehow get back going under the circumstances.
You're right. They're performing in a much larger hall. We even explored the idea of, could we move some of our work to a much larger hall where we could socially distance. We ran some math models on that, and we didn't find any that worked even if we could do it. But Symphoria does have that challenge. They have the larger hall. They do fewer performances, so it's they try to get as many people in for fewer performances. And like singing, there are certain musical instruments that when you're putting vapor particles out into the air, some musical instruments as well as some singing causes more vapor particles to be distributed in a broader range. We've seen that with some choir singing that's caused problems with the spread of the coronavirus. So yeah, every arts group has its own challenges. I think the Everson may be the better off, because there's more inanimate objects to view, and you can socially distance more easily when you're viewing those inanimate objects. And also you guys should know too that all the performing arts groups in town have been working together and communicating about how Red House, the On Center, Landmark, we've all been in conversation, because when we do reopen, there will inevitably be protocols. We think it'd be smart if the protocols are the same whenever you're going to see something around town, so that it's easier, not as confusing. Oh, do I have to do this? Am I getting my temperature checked here but not here? Do I wear a mask here but not here? How will I be seated here? So we're all trying to coordinate, even though we are all different, we're still trying to coordinate the procedures for when that day comes when we can admit the public. Because pre-vaccine, if we can admit the public, and we do believe we will be able to admit public, we are meeting constantly about what does that look like. I don't imagine initially I don't imagine our programs will be online. I can't imagine handing everybody a program, for instance. I can't imagine giving everybody an open drink. Will we have concessions? The big issue are the restrooms. How do we effectively do that? Do we have to pivot to plays that don't have intermissions so we don't have to worry about intermission bathroom lines? Those are the exciting things we're wrestling with. More questions? What do you guys want to ask about?
Hi, Bob. Are there any creative silver linings to this pandemic? Like, is there anything that you're optimistic about moving forward?
There are a couple things. There was the question earlier about access and how do we continue to make sure access is assured. I don't think we'll ever go back to exactly the way things were done before, because we might always have a video component to our work. We liked the idea that 47 people in 47 states watched Amadeus. So maybe that kind of video access will be something we build into the work, so that people who can't come to Irving Street can still experience the work that we're creating. Particularly when it comes to education and young people, because young folks engage the world in different ways than we do, and that's good. And so we're learning more about ways that young people engage with the world. Our Young Playwrights Festival, which was created by juniors and seniors in high school, was delightful to watch. Their innovation, the way they innovated within the technology. I couldn't have done it. I learned a lot from them. So I think that there's a silver lining there. In terms of the way Syracuse Stage operates functionally, I've been in the building twice since March 13. I've been working here at home. Our whole staff has been working here at home. So I believe there are maybe new models of how we will go to work, how we will interact with each other, how we will collaborate. We've done so many calls with artists from all over the country that we used to bring to Syracuse and meet in person. We'll still do that, but why spend all that money bringing everybody here when we could maybe invest that money in the work or the outreach of our work, and continue to meet in these new platforms that are getting better and better, that are virtual platforms. So that's an internal, small silver lining, but the bigger silver lining that I think will evolve from this is how we deliver our content. We will never abandon coming together live in a space, because that's what theater is. Theater is, there's a director by the name of Bill Ball, had a theater, American Conservatory Theater out in San Francisco. And in a book that he wrote, he talked about that moment of aha. And the moment of aha was when artists and audience come together in a shared space and share a magic experience where there is a moment of aha that happens only when audiences and artists come together and tell and experience a story. And so that's the core of our art form, and we'll never abandon that. But there are ways that we can enhance it and make it more interesting. We continue to speculate about what that means. And while I do think the experience of going to theater is going to change, I don't know if you'll ever see a printed ticket again. For instance, there are some things that won't change, and I look forward to that.
The Landmark Theater was doing some major renovation.
Yes.
How has this played into their the renovations with seats and things that they were doing?
That's a good question. We were on a call with them the other day, and I know that they're exploring that. I don't want to speak for them, and I don't know the details of what they're doing. And I know that now that construction has opened back up, that's a good thing for them. But we were in conversation with another theater company that was also in the process of renovating, and they were absolutely wrestling with that question of, gosh, maybe we should rethink the whole theater setup. And I know that one of the things that they're looking at is flexibility. And the Landmark, is more of a fixed space because it's been itself for so many years. Harder for them, and because their business model is based on how many tickets they need to sell for these large events. But other theaters that we've been talking to nationally, who were just kind of coincidentally in the midst of re-envisioning or renovating or building a new theater, have gone back to the drawing board about what their performance space looks like, and about how they recognize that this may not be a singular event, this idea of a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And how might we be thoughtful, and even though it's pretty hard to prepare for the unknown, how might we be thoughtful about how we design our theater spaces, our gathering spaces, moving forward? It's absolutely going to have an impact on design.
Hi, Bob.
Yes.
Your production of Medea, I'm just looking at your website, and it mentions down here, buy tickets or explore. I did think you said it was going to be free.
It is free. So I'll have to go back and figure that one out. I'll ask somebody about that. And maybe if you click on buy tickets, it turns up as no charge. The union, the Actors Equity Association union, excuse me, requires that if we want to do it for free, the union requires that we at least ask people for a donation, or we can't show the video. I don't know why that is, but it's one of their rules. People could say, no, I don't want to donate, and they can still watch it. And one of the things we're doing, particularly in light of current national events, is we are right now in the process of pivoting from a donation to Syracuse Stage to a donation to a community-based group that might be important for us to support right now. And so I'll have to ask. In fact, when we get off this Zoom gathering, I'll give a call over to marketing and see what that means, or if we need to get something that clarifies that, because it is free. There isn't a charge. So
Okay, thank
we'll
you.
figure that one out.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for being here. Can you hear me? And telling us the reality of what's going on at Syracuse Stage, but also giving us hope for the future too. So we really appreciate your information. Thank you and your time.
You know, I appreciate it. You know, I was saying earlier today, it is a hard thing to turn on the news right now, because we are shocked, we feel helpless, and you know, in times like this, we look to places like theater to do its own small part to help us make sense of the world, to give us escape, even something as simple as escaping, but in larger context to give us more hope, and to help us put the world in context. And we aren't around to do that right now. We're trying to find out ways that we can, but we try to, we in our own little way, we try to be in the hope business, and you know, we don't have grand ideas about changing the world, but we can knock away at it every now and then.
Yeah.
We're enjoying the entertainment behind you, Bob. Your
You see my cat? So, you know, I live my wife and I live in a large older home that we live in here near the university. And when it became clear that I was going to have to be at home every day for the foreseeable future, I didn't really have a home office, but we had a room in the house that we had never done much with. You can see the cat back there. We had never done much with this small room, and so the cats kind of took it over. And this is their room, and I have now put a desk in it and have claimed it as my office. But I really am just sharing it with my cats, and it really is their room, and I'm squatting in it.
Well, we love to see photobombing by the cats.
So that's my youngest, who's a cat, who's just kind of entertaining ourselves. But I will say that in this time when we're home all the time, our various animals have been kind of an endless source of entertainment and comfort. But I'm going to pass it back over to Bill. I think we're just about at our hour and about ready to wrap things up. And I just want to express my appreciation to all of you for many of you are wonderful supporters of Syracuse Stage, and your support is really greatly appreciated. And we look forward to welcoming you back in person just as soon as we can.